What's up guys, welcome back. So in a recent video I covered the monumental failure of Pixar's most recent new IP, Elio. Now it seems like Pixar is just not learning their lesson because this headline recently came out that says Disney points fingers after Elio flops. Stop asking for originals if you won't watch them. There's no way we're doing this right now guys, Pixar, come on. So I thought this has gotta be some kind of fabricated, sensationalized headline. There's no way they actually said something like this. But guess what, if you go on Pixar's official Instagram profile and you just scroll down a little bit, there it is. Check it out.
Stop complaining that Disney doesn't make original stories if you don't show up to movie theaters and support them in the first place. Who said that? Oh my gosh. I thought I was the only one in my car. But anyways, there's a new original story. Look at that. From Disney Pixar called Elio. You should go ahead and support it. It comes out this Friday. So yeah, you should go to movie theaters. Thank you.
Posted a week ago. That is crazy. How tone deaf. Pixar, what are we doing here, guys? What are we doing here? Do you seriously think now is the time to blame the audience for not wanting to quote unquote see original stories? Look at K-pop Demon Hunters. That's an original story and it's popping off right now. Who doesn't want to see original stories? Maybe Disney Pixar just doesn't understand the predicament that they're in, so maybe let's give them some tough love today, because we should not have a billion-dollar corporation trying to gaslight an audience into supporting an IP just because it's original and blaming a flop on the audience instead of taking responsibility for things that they didn't do well, like marketing, like art style, like the story, which we're going to talk about today. So apparently Pixar massively changed Elio after the original cut was test screened and not a single person raised their hand when asked if they would pay to see the film in a movie theater. Elio was also initially a queer-coded character until leadership told them to make him more masculine. Now that is interesting, so I decided to look into this a little bit. According to multiple insiders who spoke to The Hollywood Reporter, Elio was initially portrayed as a queer-coded character, reflecting original director Adrian Molina's identity as an openly gay filmmaker. Other sources say that Molina did not intend the film to be a coming-out story as the character is 11, but either way the characterization gradually faded away throughout the production process as Elio became more masculine following feedback from leadership. Gone were not only such direct examples of his passion for environmentalism and fashion, but also as seen in Elio's bedroom with pictures suggesting a male crush. Hints at the trash fashion remain in the released film, with the boy wearing a cape decorated with discarded cutlery and soda can tabs, although without any explanation for the unusual attire. Now, I talked about his character design in the last video being completely discombobulated and just not knowing what it wants to be, and this might contribute a little bit as to why. If I knew that he was somebody who cared deeply about the environment and collecting trash off of the beaches, maybe the costumes would have made a little bit more sense, even though they're still not visually appealing to look at. So apparently a couple of years ago during a test screening, although viewers expressed how much they enjoyed the movie, they were also asked how many of them would see it in the theater, and not a single hand was raised. And it was around the same time that Molina screened his latest cut of the film to Pixar leadership. There are different accounts of the exact feedback that the director received from Pixar boss Pete Docter, with rumors circulating in some of the studio circles that Molina was hurt by the conversation. Molina exited the project soon after, and much of Elio was reworked. Now, some of the insiders are claiming that if the original story had stayed the way it is, if it was a little bit more about the child's identity, with the queer-coded theme, that it would have done better in theaters and it would have had more meaning to the film. And none of us can, of course, confirm or deny that, but I have a feeling that it would have done just as badly, considering the fact that during a test screening, literally nobody said they would see it in theaters despite liking the film, and that's kind of how most people feel about it right now. I was deeply saddened and aggrieved by the changes that were made, says former Pixar assistant editor Sarah Ligotic, who provided feedback during Elio production as a member of the company's internal LGBTQ group, Pix Pride. Ligotic notes that a number of creatives working on the film stepped down after the directors shared their first cut of the movie. Another Pixar source disputes that people stepped down in response to Molina's departure. One former Pixar artist said it was pretty clear during the production of the first version of the film that studio leaders were constantly sanding down these moments in the film that alluded to Elio's sexuality of being queer. queer. Suddenly you remove this big key piece which is all about identity, and Elio just becomes about totally nothing. The Elio that is in theaters right now is far worse than Adrian's best version of the original. Elio was just so cute and so much fun and had so much personality, and now he just feels much more generic to me. Well, I'm glad they realize and they're self-aware. This part's very interesting to me. So the Elio production resulted in fraught feelings for those with ties to Pixar who have come to question whether the company intends to prioritize diversity. Dr. sparked debate when he noted in a 2024 interview that the studio should make the most relatable films possible, which was perceived as advocating for a shift away from underrepresented characters and voices. But did the decision to downplay Elio's queer themes actually come from the parent company? Insiders aren't so sure. A lot of people like to blame Disney, but the call is coming from inside the house. As the artist, a lot of it is obeying in advance behavior coming from higher execs at Pixar. The person cites such examples as next year's animated feature Hoppers having to tone down themes of environmentalism, and also reveals that a movie in early development got a startling note that the director was told you can't have divorce in this movie. A different source with knowledge of the project downplays the notion of this representing major meddling and sees such suggestions as typical of any early development process. So there's a lot of internal drama going on at Pixar, as you guys can see, and there seems to be a clashing of ideologies. Now that would definitely explain the failure of this film, because if it was already almost finished and they had to scrap it and completely change the character, that's obviously gonna have a devastating effect. But again, that does not mean Pixar should feel justified in blaming the audience for not supporting this project. We're not obligated to support any project just because it's an original IP. We support it because it's good. Now, because there's a lot of internal drama coming out about the story of this film, I think now is a good time to actually take a look at the stories that Pixar is producing, because quite frankly, they're just not up to par. I saw this one thread on X about this, and I think this is a very interesting way to look at the stories and how they might have changed to become a little bit less relatable to the average person. The main shift in Pixar films over the last 30 years is from stories about being a parent to stories about being parented. Toy Story, obvious metaphor for parenthood. Two toys swallow their pride and realize their role as caregivers of a kid. Monsters Inc. Two buddies have their friendship tested as they try to get a child back home. Finding Nemo. An anxious father learns how to let his kid grow up. Incredibles. Ambitious father learns how to balance his career with his family. Up. Elderly widower gets a new outlook on life by adopting a foster son. Toy Story 3. Toys grapple with change and mortality as their kid grows up and moves out. And I think this makes a lot of sense, because who's bringing these kids to see the movies? The kids are not going to drive themselves. The kids are not going to buy their own tickets. It's the parents. So when you're able to craft a story that somehow transcends generations and everybody can relate to, everybody can be entertained by, that's when you have success on your hands. But in recent years, I don't know if this is a product of Pixar and the upper management wanting to just play it safe. They've been going back repeatedly to this theme of the coming of age of a child. And usually the character is, quirky, clumsy, has a lot of problems, doesn't really fit in anywhere, but just has a heart of gold, just the best in the world. Now compare that to something like Toy Story, like A Bug's Life, like Cars. Those three stories, even though they're about adding anthropomorphication to things that are completely non-human, they're magnitudes more relatable to the average person than a coming-of-age story of a strange kid who doesn't fit in. Look, I'm a former child. You guys watching this video, you're also all former children. And we've all had these experiences in our heads where, we kind of just imagine, what if this thing that I'm holding in my hand was alive? What if cars actually had feelings? What if these bugs actually talk to each other? These types of stories, combined with iconic character designs, resonate with everybody. They give everybody that nostalgic feeling because we all used to think, what if this thing was alive? It's all a part of our inner child, a part of our imagination. And these movies use this nostalgic vessel to convey a theme and a story that kids can learn from, their parents can learn from, and even their grandparents can also learn from. Like Toy Story, coming to an understanding, setting aside your differences, working together for the good of a child. A Bug's Life, conveying the strength of unity and the power of the many. Someone also left this comment on my last video, which I think I just completely agree with. I don't think it's just the art style, it's also the main characters. They are all kids. Pixar used to be about toys, fish, young adult car, rat, family retired hero. Now it's just kids with funny issues. These are no longer stories where every single person can find something to latch onto. Elio was originally supposed to be queer. The director wanted it to reflect his own story of growing up gay, having crushes on men, and wearing pink and purple clothes. Test audiences didn't like it, the director was fired, and the film was remade. Now, I'm personally all for uplifting underrepresented voices. But here's the thing, when this director wants to create a story that directly reflects his childhood, his own experiences growing up as a kid, obviously you're going to have something that doesn't really resonate with a lot of the audience. I read a comment that was really good somewhere where someone basically said these new coming of age stories where they follow around a kid with a lot of issues almost start to feel like an autobiography of the director or the writers, instead of this completely escapist, fantastical, and imaginative story. They start to feel like the retelling of personal experiences in childhood, personal traumas, personal family issues. And at some point, the board members, the directors, and the writers at Pixar have to realize that the majority of the common audience don't really relate to this type of niche character. You know, a child who's coming of age and has all of these quirky and unique issues, somehow feels like they just don't belong anywhere, has all of these family problems, and then in the end, they somehow figure it out. Now, I've seen Elio, and I'll be honest with you, this feels a little bit like a movie that was made for kids by people who didn't really understand the joy of being a kid. And I feel like this is reflected in the design of the character as well. Elio feels like a kid who was designed by someone who doesn't understand kids. Like all the plastic forks and the bottle caps and all of the unnecessary complexity that's here. You guys are all former kids, so you probably know this. Like which kid do you know makes shoulder pads like that and puts bottle caps on it like that? Who does that? Kids are the absolute masters of simplicity is key. A kid can put a cardboard box over his body, and in that kid's mind, he's wearing the most beautiful and spectacular suit of medieval armor. So Pixar, when you target an audience that you don't really seem to understand and you make a story that doesn't really resonate with parents, who's gonna see this movie? The reason that the Toy Story sequel does well, that the Inside Out sequel does well, is because you've built up that goodwill from the original movie. People have trust. People see that Toy Story title and they think, I had a great time watching that first movie, so this must be good. So I don't know, guys, this is probably gonna be a very sensitive topic, especially when it comes to identity politics, and there's really no right or wrong way to interpret this, so let me know what you guys think of this whole situation and try to be nice to each other in the comments, or you can start some fights if you want. I don't mind that. But regardless, you know, I'm not gonna just sit on my butt and watch Pixar try to come out and shift the blame onto the audiences, despite all of this audience feedback, all of this dialogue that's happening online. How could you as a studio now still choose to not see the flaws in your own work and still shift the responsibility onto the audience? Like, why are we not taking a little bit of ownership here, guys? Nobody owes it to you as a studio to pay their hard-earned money at the movie theaters to take their family with them to go out and see this film. If it's not a great film, it's just not a great film. And Elio was pretty average. And obviously there was a marketing shortage for this film too. It could have done better, but Disney didn't really push it out there. So why not take some accountability there? Why not just own that? And you know what? If you're watching this video and you're like a young person, you're trying to figure out your way in life, here's my fatherly advice to you, okay? Don't be like Pixar. In life, you're gonna go out there, you're gonna do things, and you're gonna fail. You're gonna fail time and time again. But what separates the people who succeed at what they do versus people who don't is taking ownership and responsibility for your own mistakes. You do something, it fails. Sure, you feel like but take that chance to look at what you could have done differently. Take that chance to try to learn from that experience. Take responsibility for that and fully own that, and you will find yourself so far ahead of someone else who's in the same situation who just wants to blame the world for everything that goes wrong in their own lives. That's my fatherly advice to you guys. I love you guys. And Pixar, that was for you too, okay? Stop it. Stop with the audience blaming. Seriously, stop. Just stop.